Well, hey, Carter, thanks for joining us and talking to the community about the topic of partnerships. So before we jump into each of the stages, can you introduce yourself, kind of some of your background, but also frame up what are we talking about? What does partnership mean?
Absolutely. Thanks again, David. I'm really looking forward to our opportunity today to talk a little bit more. But to get started, I am a partner guy. I work in something called the channel. I've been doing the channel the last 6 of my 8 years. I'm doing a lot of the work in the B2B space. I spent some time working at AWS, predominantly working with partners that were coming and building technologies in the cloud. As you probably heard that buzzword, Apple Cloud, I'm a part of that. Then I also ended up moving over to working at Oracle and helping support companies called system integrators. And those essentially are individuals that have a unique experience and knowledge around building our products. So I've worked through a couple different channels and partnerships, as we call them, in a couple different facets. But, today we're going to kind of roll it back a little bit and talk about partnerships 101 here, where I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. And really it is where two companies, it could be more than two companies, it could be multiple companies, come together on a joint value with a joint or agreed upon objective. So again, it's an exciting opportunity where, again, it is a force multiplier. It will allow you to really capitalize on, not just growing individually, but growing with somebody that can help complement you in such a way to really help you achieve scale. And with a partnership, you can do that.
Well, that sounds exciting. Let's go ahead and jump in.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Like, we finish existential stage when we have that solution statement that's really like, okay, what's the problem we're solving? And that's when we move into discovery. And so that discovery stage is like what you were just saying, where we try and figure out, and we validate, what is it exactly I'm selling? So we're taking that offer, we're crafting that offer, we're testing that offer, and really validating it with, ideally actual paying clients versus people who have expressed interest. But these are people who have actually are trading their value for your value, and you're able to dial in and validate it to the point that you feel confident that, okay, if I take this and I try and move into the next stage where I grow this, I know that the more times people see it, the more times they're going to buy it. And I've validated that with enough repetition in there that I'm confident I can sell it. So in this discovery stage, we're really discovering what is that idea or that irresistible offer there. What kind of things should someone be thinking about in that stage with partnerships?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the next phase I kind of brought up a little bit or touched on it is creating your ideal partner profile. So as you are an entrepreneur, figuring out and testing where your product fits or your solution fits and how it is, why people are buying it. In that time, you want to go and start going to the drawing board, figuring out what are some goals we're trying to set right now. And then I like to use this term because I come from Amazon, work backwards from some of those goals and really try to get to that end resolution. And some of the things that you would do is be like, who is my target demographic? Who are the areas that I'm going to be leveraging from a marketing standpoint? What are some of the key metrics we're going to be looking to maybe understand and better familiarize ourselves with? And so you start to figure out, okay, so these are important to me. Maybe there's another company that has similar things that are important to them that is complementary to our business. And it's starting to build a traction and story around that. And so you will go through 4 or 5 different points, identifying and building out what this profile looks like. And then you start to realize, hey, this is a type of partner I need to go start working with. And if I can find those, it'll get me to X, Y, and Z. And so it's kind of building that ideal partner profile that'll complement your business, whatever it may be. It definitely is the area that you want to probably invest in around this time.
Okay. Yeah. So can you give maybe a concrete example of what that might look like to identify a goal and kind of work backwards to get that ideal partner profile sorted? And I know you don't have to go through all of the details, but maybe just kind of pick hey, what's one you've seen that could work as a good example so that could make it a little more concrete for someone who might be in this stage?
Yeah, let me just talk about a couple of successful partnerships to give us maybe a sense to kind of understand where you can start thinking about it in more detail. One I'm a big fan of, and this is more in the tech space, is Rosetta Stone and Uber are partnering with each other. Now, this happened back in 2020, and what Rosetta Stone and Uber came to the conclusion was, we want to give an avenue for our drivers to better equip themselves learning another language. They could be, English might not be their first language, or they could be living in another country where that predominant language is not the language of choice for them either. So they partnered together and created an avenue for their drivers to essentially be able to, A, invest and learn in better communication in the local language, and B, also allowing Uber to be able to capitalize on increasing a better customer experience between the riders and also the drivers there. So that right there is a great example of what a partnership can kind of look like. But when you're looking at it, you want to look about the first step is understanding, again, those business objectives, and then following through on understanding what your market looks like, understanding what it is we're doing together. If you can start to understand those two components early on, then you're going to start to figure out, okay, we know where our target demographic, we know where our services, we know where our solution is, we know a lot of these other things. And I think it's really important to start mapping those out through there. And then you can start to, go through a feedback loop, as we call it. Okay, does this make sense? Can I validate this? And kind of go back to, okay, is this what I really need? And is this what we can do jointly together, potentially, with this respective profile that you've kind of built out?
Yeah, and that makes sense. How, like, I like that example, because even when you first mentioned that Uber and Rosetta Stone, I was like, how did they partner together? Like, it didn't seem apparent at first, but then when you started talking through it, because it's not, sometimes I imagine, like you mentioned, fulfillment, where it's like, okay, that feels more directly with like the product you're delivering, where in this case, it's like, oh, this is they're partnering. So the product of a driver who can take you somewhere is of higher quality. It's really, who can help me deliver with the excellence of my offer, maybe not necessarily the execution of my offer. It's not like, which, they could partner with car rental companies, which I'm sure Uber does also, but that would be kind of a little bit different. And so I imagine that's helpful to even hear you as you're fleshing out, like, oh, okay, there's different aspects. It's not just the delivery of my offer. It can be other aspects of my business where I'm considering these partnerships. And Carter, is a question here really kind of like, because Uber could have gone and created their own like language learning app, but that would be an enormous amount of work to do that. And so really part of the question is, when you're working back from these goals, is there someone else who does this so much better than I that it makes sense for me to actually just pay them to do it? Is that kind of
you hit the nail on the head?
You're going,
yeah, you did it again. You did it again. And it's really all about, what is it where I'm not going, this is not an area I'm going to specialize in. This is not where I'm going to invest my time and energy in. It's all about the expertise here that I have. And this right here is going to come and make my solution and their services or their product jointly together better. We call it like a better together story. You're trying to build this story in such a way that, one here, me, the partner, we work together in a way that really is able to capitalize on growth. I like to talk about that force multiplier growth. And really the biggest thing here for that is this model. We call this 1 + 1 = 3. Individually as an organization, you might not be able to achieve what you can achieve jointly together. And doing that is not just the sum of all of those together. It's a multiplier of what you can accomplish more jointly together. So it really does open more doors. Another great example to tell you might be Taco Bell and Doritos. Those are two well-known brand names that came together and created a Doritos Locos Taco. They ended up selling like 100 million of them within 10 weeks, which I'm still trying to figure out how they got to that number, but apparently that's what I was finding out online. And so they were able to scale something very unique. And it's just the complementariness of each other and finding an avenue where people that are big fans of each, well, they'll probably be even bigger fans if you can combine the two of them.
I love what you called out there of like, what am I not going to specialize in?
Yeah.
Which I think is a good way to frame that for all of us who are entrepreneurs, who like starting new things, like learning new things, sometimes to a fault. And so where it's kind of that you could do any of these things, you cannot do all of them. And so you're really trying to figure out, hey, what on all the things I could specialize, what goes on my not to do list, which is hard. early on, because you kind of, a lot of times it's like you're in that creative fun space early on, and anything seems possible, but you really do need to steward your attention and your time well. And I love how what you're sharing with us gives us some tools to be able to steward our attention and our time, especially at these early stages, but even more so as we kind of jump into some of the next ones. So, all right, let's talk actually about kind of that next stage of adoption. So we leave discovery when we have a validated offer that we know, like, okay, I feel confident that we can sell this. All right, well, as we've kind of walked through all these different stages, Carter, is there anything you want to kind of, way you want to frame up just partnerships in general, some takeaways for our founders, our leaders that are watching this?
Yeah. Spend some time with your team. Really get to know the ideal partner profile. I even have this note right in front of me that even talks about it. It's just like, going back to knowing your business goals, find the right business model, whether it be distribution, whether it be an OEM partnership, maybe it be, franchise, or maybe it's just a co-branded marketing partnership here. So really making sure that you craft that narrative, and that narrative evolves with you as your company evolves. Make sure that you're taking into consideration cultural as well. If the company you're working with doesn't share cultural things that are important for you as an organization, then you could run the risk of having something that really doesn't pan out to being a successful partnership. So I think it's always going back to having those key components locked in, and then finally understanding the motion of sell to, sell with, and sell through. I didn't touch on that too much, but I want to touch on it now. Is you can sell directly to someone with your own resources. You can sell with somebody. And again, that's where you're using their resources to help you sell their product potentially. And you can sell through them. And that's like a marketplace. You can use that pretty easily to think about like Amazon.com and going and using that as a procurement channel to purchase and buy products and have them be sold there. So if you can get that down to a T and understand, again, that value prop, we talked about that Better Together story, and spend time on it, because it's not easy. It's going to be one of the most challenging things for you to build that out. But if you can get that down to the T, then it's easy to go sell it, because if you can convince somebody else to sell your own product, then you're doing something right.
Yeah, I like that. That's really helpful. I think actually, yeah, this has been really helpful, Carter, as you've walked through. I'm sure people may have some other questions, which they can always come, and glad you're part of the community at Fiesta Connect, and so they can come in here and ping you, maybe ask some questions, grab some time. But yeah, thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us, and yeah, kind of walking through what does partnerships look like at each stage of business.
Thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it.